Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it's time to wrap up the rankings with the final position. Let's pronunciate here. The running backs. This feels a lot like the wide receivers did last week in a sense, although still a little bit more of a positive spin than where as a down on a lot of the wide receivers last week. So a couple of announcements here. Derrick Henry does not have a concussion. That came out yesterday. So that is big news, of course, in terms of Tyjae Spears and for Derrick Henry. Right now, I'm expecting him to play. I think he is still banged up, still considered to be questionable at this point in time. No injury reports have come out, however, as of the time of filming this for Derrick Henry. Don't know if he's officially questionable. Then also for the Seattle running backs, there's a litany of possibilities of different ways that things could go as to who is going to be the starter this week. I still have no clue what to do with them, so stay tuned for the Saturday episode, the update episode on those guys, and in the meantime, just kind of hang on to them, and DJ Dallas, if he's out there on the waiver wire, worth holding on to. And in deeper leagues, so would be McIntosh, I believe it is, that they have at running back. A guy who I actually really liked coming out of in the offseason as far as a running back goes. Just liked how he ran a lot. And he would be the more powerful of the two between him and DJ Dallas. Also, please don't forget to drop a like on the video. That always helps. And don't forget that on Thursday, 1.5 to 2 hours, somewhere in that time frame, I will be prior to kickoff for the Thursday night football game. I will be here live on YouTube for any of your start-sit questions. And on Sunday, of course, as always, I will be here live 3 hours prior to kickoff for your start-sit questions. So please stop on in, hang out. It's always a good time. And we need to recap how I did in Week 13 with my running backs for the DFS plays that I gave you, which you will find, if I remember to record it, which I haven't for the tight ends and the wide receivers already this week, you will find, otherwise it's down in the comments, my picks for this week's DFS picks at the end of this video. Otherwise, we'll also recap how I did with my Fatums and my Love'ems. So for the DFS plays, I thought that you should pay for Tony Pollard at 6,800 DK bucks, and I said that if you're looking for to take a cheap flyer type of option, that Rico Dowdle might be able to put up a respectable number in this game. It didn't end up paying off for Rico Dowdle. Tony Pollard ended as 12th on the week in full PPR formats, so I don't know if that necessarily paid off or not at that price. Probably got what you paid for, roughly. And I thought that Zach Moss, as the whole world did, at 4,600 bucks was a good price. He finished 27th on the week, so that was no bueno. Then for my big tournament long shots and or contrarian plays, I gave you Antonio Gibson at 4,500 bucks. A little bit of luck involved there, quite potentially for the outcome. He finished 19th on the week. Due to an injury to Brian Robinson, who was a fade for me last week, so that does not qualify as being victorious there. Injuries get tossed out. And then Zach Charbonnet at 5,300 bucks, I also thought would be a good long shot contrarian play. He finished 13th on the week, so I don't know for sure if those guys were values or not. Zach Charbonnet almost certainly would have been a value there for that cost and where he finished. And maybe Antonio Gibson, you got your money back at the very least, slight value. For my fades last week, Breece Hall, Brian Robinson. As I said, Brian Robinson got injured for Breece Hall. That was a good call, definitely. Finished 25th on the week. And for my loves, bad calls, just like with Zach Moss here. The whole world was on top of this. Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, put them both as loves. Figured, worst case scenario, I got to get one of these right. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. They finished 23rd and 29th on the week. So let's get on to this week's rankings. You can see the projections as I go through the rankings. They are up on the screen. Going without notes for the most part here on all the running backs. So we'll see how that goes on the other side. And we're going to start this week off with a tiny little starting off tier with Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. These are my two must-starts, absolutely. That's going to bring us on to this second tier, which is monstrous. And whenever I have a large tier, that typically means There's a lot of uncertainty going on with the rankings, at least within that tier. And there certainly is a lot of uncertainty going on behind Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. And things could shuffle around. I already did shuffle some things around just before filming that after looking at it again, I'm like, oh, these guys got to move. So, yeah, very, very much in flux here. So stay tuned for the Saturday update as well. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to challenge the rankings. I understand I do have some of these players quite a bit different than the ECR. And hopefully I'll help you come to some sort of understanding for the reasoning behind the rankings. So we're going to start off here at running back 3 with Kyren Williams. Going up against Baltimore, really tough matchup, but he's been an absolute stud. You see the projections there are as just about as good as anybody's. And maybe this is one where like I feel like I just have Saquon Barkley too low. The projections obviously still love him. He's been pretty good with Danny DeVito, and Green Bay is a really good matchup. Maybe a little bit less so as of late as that offense gets going, forcing other teams to have to pass a little bit more, not be able to just grind it out against this, frankly, bad defensive front in terms of stopping the run. But yeah, regardless, the temp gauge likes Kyren a little bit more than these guys as well, and he gets it done through the air a lot as well too. I don't know, but I do know I would have a tough time sitting Kyren Williams despite not a great matchup. Travis Etienne, Cleveland has been a better matchup as of late. A little bit of a higher floor here. Do you think that regardless of Trevor Lawrence's health coming into this week, they'll probably have to try to, maybe not have to, rely on Travis Etienne a little bit more as well. And, based on how he's done, it still projects really, really well. A little bit touchdown reliant of a guy, but once again, should see plenty of opportunities. Then Saquon Barkley, just talked about that, really good matchup there against Green Bay. He's done well despite being in a crappy situation. Then we got Devon Achane here, and Raheem Mostert just a couple of spots behind him. And what I do want to point out here, Raheem Mostert is a love for me this week. I had a hard time not ranking him above Devon Achane. And here's the main reason why. If you looked at the first half last week, now the second half starts, Raheem Mostert comes out, takes 2 carries, and those are the first 2 carries of the second half, and never sees the field again. Or at least he never sees the ball again. No touches from that point forward. Up until that point in the game, actually not including those 2 carries, the first half of the game, Mostert outcarried Achane 9-3. 9 carries, Achane 3 carries. That is 75% of the work went to Mostert. He is still their starter. And they obviously feel strongly about that as they rest him for the entire second half while they had their lead. So don't let the final numbers from that point on. I believe Achane has 12 carries for the rest of the game, or 12 touches maybe it is, for the rest of the game, out touches Mostert. That's just not what it is in terms of while they're in a competitive game. Now, here is the issue. They're going up against Tennessee this week. I do think that this is another week where we should see Miami be able to trounce against the opponent, and another week where maybe Mostert hits the sideline early and Devon Achane gets a fair amount of work. Can we expect a whole half? No, but maybe at least a quarter. So maybe we're thinking 12 carries, 1 to 2 targets for Mostert. Not even quite 15 touches. Still, not the most to work with, but in this offense, really good chance to get a touchdown, and he's been doing it all season. There are records that he can be setting soon, so they're definitely going to be trying to get him that and make sure that that comes through. So I love Mostert this week still, and Achane, he just projects better. I might still flip these by the end of the week, but once again, going back to thinking there's a pretty decent chance that they're going to turn the ball over to Achane yet again at some point in this game and once again rest Raheem Mostert, as their goal this season is to win a Super Bowl. It's nothing short of that. So everything that they do is in preparation of being able to win a Super Bowl. They are preparing for that. They have been all season long. Now, on to my running back 7 here, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then we got David Montgomery at running back 10, the Detroit duo here. And originally, I actually had David Montgomery, I think, ranked 5th. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, ranked 9th before I did a little bit of shuffling just before the video, because what I did is I remember just a couple of weeks ago, and I saw it while looking at some of the numbers this week, in terms of the matchup against Chicago, that this matchup favors the Jahmyr Gibbs skill set much better than it does the David Montgomery skill set. And we look just 2 weeks ago, maybe it's 3 weeks ago, but just a couple of games ago, we look back at the box score and we see David Montgomery, 12 for 76 and a touchdown. That's great. 2 receptions as well for like 22 yards there. Also great, of course. He does get outscored by Jahmyr Gibbs in, I think this is full PPR, maybe, but I believe he would get outscored by Jahmyr Gibbs in all formats if I did my math correctly. Here's the thing about David Montgomery. If you take away his 20-yard carry, which I believe went for a touchdown, then it was, and we'll keep the touchdown, but then it's 11 carries for 56 yards. Still a good number, a high average for carry there, but nowhere near the same thing, and David Montgomery isn't really somebody that you expect to break out for a 20-yard touchdown, though he has had a couple of those types of plays this season. Nonetheless, Jahmyr Gibbs, 6 receptions, 59 yards, and 8 carries, 36 yards, 4.5 yard average, a touchdown as well for him. Did quite well himself in this matchup, and the big thing is those 6 receptions. That is the exact reason why I liked him a couple weeks ago over David Montgomery in this Chicago matchup, because Chicago lets up a lot of receptions to running backs, and they actually teams don't tend to run the ball against them a whole lot relative to other teams. So we're going to go back to the formula here, and the projections also like it better. Jahmyr Gibbs is my 7th ranked running back, and I like him a little bit better than David Montgomery, but still fully expecting David Montgomery to get another touchdown and be good in this game. Isaiah Pacheco right there in between all these guys at running back 9. Buffalo has been had on the ground a fair bit, so expecting him to have a solid game yet again. Then we got Zach Moss here, and disappointing week last week, very disappointing. Going up against Cincinnati, it looks to be a solid enough matchup, and the projections, of course, love him because he has been fantastic when he has had the ball and gotten a lot of work. And last week, he got 94% of the work. He was not fantastic last week by any means, unfortunately. And so we have, that's fresh on our minds here. But at the end of the day, still have quite a bit of faith in Zach Moss. And maybe I'm even too low on him, but I'm still a little bit scarred from last week. Then we've got Bijan Robinson at running back 12 going up against Tampa Bay. I like everything about that. Should be able to find some success, hopefully. Joe Mixon going up against Indianapolis. Not so great of a matchup here, and I'll tell you why, because it looks like a good matchup when you look at the numbers. But he is a fade for me this week. Indianapolis was once a very tough run defense, and that was true up until about 6 weeks ago when they lost their defensive tackle, Grover Stewart. Sorry if I got his position wrong, but the main idea here is their big man, Grover Stewart, up the middle, was absolutely dominant against the run. And then he got suspended for 6 weeks. He is coming back this week. So I expect this Indianapolis defense to be much harder to rush against. And we still, great win for Cincinnati. Did they win? Great game. I think they won, right? For Cincinnati, Jake Browning, Joe Mixon, everyone involved. I don't want to get too caught up in it. And with Grover Cleveland, Stewart coming back, just concerned about that. And so I am fading him this week, but still have him ranked 13th. Then Rachaad White in at running back 14 going up against Atlanta. It's a really tough rushing defense. He still gets a lot of his work through the air, so I'm not too scared about that. But I'm also not incredibly optimistic. Teams actually don't throw to their running back a whole lot against Atlanta. That is also on the lower end. So that is the primary reason why I do have him pushed back a little ways here. And you can see that a little bit in the projections. Austin Eckler going up against Denver. Yes, sure, they've been better as of late, but they still haven't been good enough that they aren't one of the best matchups, despite being better as of late. So they're obviously not dominant to the opposite extreme of the first few weeks, because it's been like 6 weeks now. We just saw how much in Indianapolis that run defense could flip. Statistically, they were a really bad matchup, and now they're a good matchup in just a matter of 6 weeks. Well, Denver's still considered to be a good matchup, so I like that for Austin Eckler, but also Austin Eckler hasn't been taken advantage of much. Then Tony Pollard going up against Philadelphia. Another one of those things where it's going to be rough sledding on the ground against Philadelphia, one of the best run defenses, if not the best run defense in the league. So that's not great. However, they can get around that extension of the run through the pass. And of course, those receptions are valuable too in half PPR, non-PPR. So Tony Pollard still going to give some faith in this tough matchup. And I really do like the ceiling. Whereas I don't know if I like this projected ceiling higher end of this expected range for Austin Eckler. I don't know how much I believe in that, but I do believe in the Tony Pollard one. So could even flip those two. Then we got Josh Jacobs here going up against Minnesota, and I think that Minnesota is going to be able to get up against Las Vegas here and force them to pass more in this game, abandon the run eventually, and limit Josh Jacobs in the meantime, as Minnesota does allow the fourth least fantasy points to the running back position in the league. So very, very tough opponent for Josh Jacobs this week. I'm not loving the setup here, and I've got some faith in the Josh Dobbs, Justin Jefferson duo here for this Minnesota offense. Then we've got Javonte Williams in at running back 18. As you can see, the projections say that I'm probably too low on him going up against the Chargers. He's been pretty darn good as of late, and I am expecting Denver to do well on offense against this Chargers defense. So I'm optimistic for Javonte Williams. DeAndre Swift, less optimistic about going up against Dallas. Not the best matchup in the world. You can see, on the cooler end of things here. Just not overly excited about it, but he should do fine for you. And Derrick Henry here with the coolest gauge out of this top 20 going up against Miami. It's not the type of setup. If he plays, there's still a chance that he doesn't play, but I think it's most likely that he does play. They're going to go behind against Miami most likely, and it's going to be hard for them to establish the run, I believe. So I still think he's essentially a must start, but if you have some of these other options, I would go that route over him. That'll bring us to this next tier here, my third tier, running backs 21 through 28, starting off with Alexander Mattison, followed by James Cook, Breece Hall, Ezekiel Elliott, Jerome Ford, Keaton Mitchell, Gus Edwards, and A.J. Dillon, and we're still in kind of a mess, and usually this is probably where I would have cut this off, but I do have another tier after this that I just want to show you really, because a lot of things are still in flux, and I know that my rankings are definitely different than some of the experts in some areas. Maybe I need to check myself on some things, and the first thing that I might need to check myself on here is Alexander Mattison, another guy who I moved like right before filming because I was going through choosing my loves, my fades, ended up giving Alexander Mattison a love, wrote this argument out for him, and I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm doing it now, because I was just going to do it mid-episode, I was just going to move him up, but I ended up making a couple other moves, so I made the move at the same time instead. So let's talk about the Minnesota backfield. This is still Madison's backfield. He hovers around 60% of the snap share as of late, so still his, and this is the sixth best running back matchup via average fantasy points allowed going up against Las Vegas. They're not very good against the run. I expect this offense will be better with Justin Jefferson. I just spoke about my expectations on the other end for Josh Jacobs not working in favor of him, which means that to the exact opposite effect, things should be working in favor of this running game and for Alexander Mattison to have a good game and once again a very good matchup. And at the end of the day, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with Alexander Mattison, whereas I've got concerns for a guy like James Cook, for example, who has had been on the field for less than 50% of the snap shares for the past 3 weeks in a row. That's not promising. Going up against Kansas City, it's a tough matchup. As you can see, the heat gauge a little bit cooled off there on him. I am concerned about him, just as I am Breece Hall here going up against Houston. The projections still like him, still like the ceiling, and I can get that ceiling a little bit. And so we'll see if he can hang on to being ranked over Ezekiel Elliott. I am concerned about the ceiling for Ezekiel Elliott. That's what keeps him behind Breece Hall for me. I know that Breece Hall can at least come off, be explosive, can have Zach Wilson back. That should help things out for him as well. Ezekiel Elliott, I don't think he can be explosive. I don't think he can break the big run. I think he has a really good floor, going to get a lot of work, but I'm not too optimistic about the upside there. It's a decent enough matchup against Pittsburgh, at least. Jerome Ford, I've got him pushed back here a little ways. I really don't dislike Jerome Ford or this matchup, just how things ended up working out. How the projections land a little bit on him. Not the best of matchups, surprisingly, against Jacksonville. Maybe that's not a surprise. I don't know. But ultimately, where I allowed him to continue to fall behind some guys is the fact that I'm pretty sure that as long as DTR gets out of concussion protocol, and I expect him to, that DTR is going to be the quarterback, and I don't think that helps anybody on this offense, whereas at least Joe Flacco might help people on this offense. So I don't love that. Then we've got Keaton Mitchell at running back 26, Gus Edwards right behind him. At the end of the day, I'll take the shot on Keaton Mitchell given the amount of work that he had in the last game that they had, expecting that to continue, and so if that does, then I think there's a good chance that Keaton Mitchell, in not a fabulous matchup against the Rams, could come out and get you a couple of home run swings, or at least one. Then A.J. Dillon going up against the New York Giants, really good matchup. I am ranking him right now as if Aaron Jones is not playing. We will see on Aaron Jones. He could return this week, so that is obviously still in flux. And that's going to bring us to this final tier: Roschon Johnson, Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, Kenneth Walker, Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary from running backs 29 through 35. And I do just want to point out, especially for Roschon Johnson here, I did tweak these. This is at his ceiling as far as these projections look. This is a best case scenario going up against Detroit, basically saying what we saw last week with him getting over 50% of the snap share is a real thing, and based on kind of projecting forward that extra work and what that might look like for him, these are the numbers that I came to. But we want to be careful with it. We don't know that Roschon Johnson is suddenly going to be the guy. I think that would be the right move for Chicago to make. Don't know if it's going to be the move they make, but I do want to point out on the optimistic side of things as far as the matchup here against Detroit, they were really good against the run. They have not been as good against the run as of late. So we do see, once again, as of late, that they can be taken, and Roschon can get some receiving work as well. So I expect that to be a fairly high-scoring game. I'm willing to take a chance on Roschon Johnson if need be, and I think that I'm going to be in that situation because it doesn't look like I'll be able to rely on Tyjae Spears this week. So there you go. There's the top 35 running backs. Let's quick go over my DFS buys for the week. We are going to pay for Saquon Barkley at $70 to $100. DK Bucks. He gives you a little bit of a discount over guys like Kamara and McCaffrey, of course. I think he's $1,000 less than Kamara, $2,000 less than McCaffrey there. And I think that there's a very decent chance for Saquon to outperform, especially Kamara. So for that discount, you can get something somewhere else and hopefully get more points overall than any opponents. And I also think that, in a way here, you might be getting a bit of a contrarian play. I don't know how much people are going to want to trust Saquon Barkley despite it looking good against Green Bay matchup-wise. Then for a good price, we've got Jahmyr Gibbs at $6,600. I explained why I like Jahmyr Gibbs this week. So there you go. I thought that was a pretty good price for him. And then Keaton Mitchell and Roschon Johnson are two guys at $4,900 that I feel like are solid guys to take a gamble on if you're looking to save a little bit of money at the running back position with some a lot of upside ultimately that could happen. But I don't think a lot of people will be banking on it necessarily. And then for the big tournament long shot / contrarian play, even though a lot of these guys kind of have been potential contrarian plays, I'm going to give you Tyjae Spears. Even if Derrick Henry plays, I talked a little bit about that. I do think that this game will require the team to get Tyjae Spears more touches than a game where they're in the lead. They're probably going to be working from behind against Miami. So I like Tyjae Spears to see a good amount of work, and if he takes full advantage of that, could always be a solid week for you. And if you're looking to save just a few hundred more bucks than those guys, he only costs you $4,600, and some guys that are just, a little bit more expensive. Like I said, Roschon Johnson, Keaton Mitchell, only $300 more. But if you really got somebody else that you want, and you're looking to find an option there under $4,800, I like Tyjae Spears. So there you go. There is your running back rankings for Week 14. Thank you very, very much for staying tuned. And I hope you guys, of course, the best of luck with your rosters. Update video on Saturday, and visit me live tonight and on Sunday. Peace out.